Okay, everyone, we're back. I'm so sorry about dumping you all off there. I had Darren as the host, and I'm just not familiar with how to do that on Zoom, and so we kind of lost a bunch of you. I hope that you're logging back in and finding us again. I apologize. Our next speaker is Dave Traub, and Dave, I'm going to tell you, so he's been here 7 years, and we don't have a staff person who gets more accolades than this guy right here in terms of customer service. He gets mentioned by name in so many Google reviews, and he just has this way of making our clients feel really, really special. So I don't think there's a person at AERC who's more qualified to do this talk than Dave, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
Well, thank you, Heidi. That's very kind. I appreciate that. Let me put this on correctly. All right, how are we doing? Okay. All right, well, good afternoon, folks. I know that life is a little bit hectic right now. I'd like to share a little bit about myself here. And first of all, talk about the objectives too. I look at customer service as it's more than just the basics. It's psychological, it's learning, it's how we feel today. And what I mean by that is you've all mostly heard the phrase, you've heard of the phrase emotional IQ. It's a big deal, folks. And what happens is the competition for good customer service is paramount, especially in today's world where you've got an underline of stress for a myriad of reasons. So the goal for today is to provide a different perspective of maximizing customer service from a psychological and learning point of view, to gain awareness that customer service is more than good business, but a way of thinking that develops and grows over the lifespan of a business and organization. It's organic. It's something that develops as the company develops. I've seen that with our company. We're very fortunate to have been here 7 years. When I started, it was 70 employees. Now we're close to 250, I understand. And the roles change, but the customer service develops and grows with the company. They're going to have 4 polls today, and the 4 polls are going to highlight some of the key initiatives that we're going to talk about. And I just want to get some feedback from folks in the audience as to what you think or where you fall into some of the categories that we're going to be talking about. A little bit about myself. I'm a career changer. I spent 34 years in the daily newspaper business. In 2008, when the big recession hit, I decided to change careers. So I transitioned and went to vet tech school at Argosy, where I went 4 years part-time evenings. I then became an intern here at the AERC of Minnesota, and I worked 6 years part-time evenings, and I finally retired from the newspaper business in December of 18, where I became full-time here at the AERC. I'm presently the daytime triage lead. I love every minute of it. It's something that I'm very, very fortunate to have be part of my life. I'm married. I have 3 kids, 35, 32, and 30, all over the country. 2 of them are in the epicenters right now, Seattle and New York City, so it's never dull in our house. 2 dogs and 2 cats. And I'm going to ask you all for feedback. I'm a big believer in that. Let's talk together. Let's find out what's on your mind and go from there. Customer service, I like to look at it as 4 basic pieces. I worked in this manner many years in the newspaper business, and I believe it's worked quite well here at the AERC of Minnesota. It's not a fad. It's something that has to be a part of who you are, what you do. It has to be coming from the heart. I know that sounds corny, but it has to come from, I want you to feel good about your experience here. Doesn't mean everything's going to go right. But the bottom line is we want you to know that we really do care and we empathize and we understand that it's not easy being in a veterinary clinic, whether you're in an emergency clinic, whether you're at a day clinic where you're just getting your shots, your core shots. Nobody really wants to be, it's like, I don't want to put it as going to the dentist, but the bottom line is it's somewhere where it's like, oh, okay, it's a challenge because my dog always sniffs the treats at the day clinic. It gets goofy. The dog always poops in the clinic. I mean, that happens. So my point being is that it's something that where we want people to understand, we get it. Communication mode. There's always 2 people involved. I don't care what the issue is. what the situation is, there's going to be two primary individuals. And the reason I bring that up is you have to learn and read the other individual. What are their hot buttons? What are their sensitive issues? There's multiple modes of communication. And in today's world, the internet is big time regarding social media, reviews, and that crazy stuff. I don't read reviews because there are times when all of a sudden somebody's going to say, oh, we did something goofy. Because the bottom line is, it is something that we work on day in and day out to try to be the best person we can be for the client and the pet and the company. And the reason I say that is that I know our customer service manager has to read the reviews, but I do not personally, only because that's just me. But the multiple modes of communication for me, most strongly, are the in-person and the telephone. And that's something that we as a society kind of slipping a little bit because of our reliance on technology. Measurable outcomes. Day clinics, emergency clinics, hospitals, whatnot, your measures of output are going to be different. Someday it's going to be a satisfied customer regarding a laceration repair, or it could be a surgery, or it could be dealing with a pet who had a reaction to his core shots, or it could be, hey, I'm not getting the right food every time I order it, I'm getting the different stuff. My point being is it's going to vary. It's going to be product related, it's going to be price point related, it could be service related, or quite honestly, it could be emotionally related. So those are the things I want you to think about. In that, you have to understand that you have to be in the moment. So let's take a look at that. There are 7 psychological factors that I believe strongly in. One of the best managers I ever had in the newspaper business, who happens to be a very good friend of mine, he is the head of the University of Minnesota Football Boosters Club. And what's funny about that is he never went to the U of M, so he doesn't tell people that, but he actually is the president of their club. And he went to St. Cloud State. But Bob Hughes is a gem of a human being. That's the person I'm referring to. And he taught me this many years ago, the 7 factors. And they are individuality, understanding, truth, transparency, your ideal selves, kindness, and surveys. And we're going to talk about these in detail. And let me share with you one thing. I want you to look back at yourself and ask yourself, when you're doing something with a client, and keep in mind, customer service is not just external, it's internal customer service. How am I treating the specialty techs? How am I treating the doctors? How am I treating the customer service people? It's all tied together. So let's talk about individuality a little bit. Strong customer service traits, these are the basics. Friendly, warm, have personal rapport. That's the smiley face. They're brief and to the point. What I mean by that is let's not belabor on. Let's be generous with our information, but also not dance around the fact. They paint a picture. They have an endpoint. We want to get to this point where the customer understands that they're ending their relationship for today or their visit with the satisfaction of understanding we met their objectives. Most customer service traits of people that are very good at it, they're excellent workers. They stick to the job at hand. They don't let things get them off track. They can combine communication styles, and we're going to talk about that. It's more than just oral and verbal. It's physical. It's body language. It's able to communicate with other people and to get other people to join in what your mission is. And what I mean by that is that if you're in a day clinic and you have two techs, a customer service person, and 1 doctor, you're a 5-person team that all have to be on the same page. The communication styles are going to differ, but you've got to be able to communicate in the same manner that gets to the point that they want to make. And we're going to talk about that. There are 4 basic communication styles that I like to deal with. Now, a lot of this information you're going to see, you can put in 4 basic communication styles on the internet and you're going to see 5 or 6 different methods. It all comes down to the same thing. How do we communicate? The ones I like to look at are thinkers, sensors, feelers, and intuitors. And what's nice about this type of breakdown is you can really see what type of people fall into these categories. Thinkers are analytic. They're cautious, they're not risk takers, they're very precise, and they ask a lot of questions. When I think of this, I think of accountants, I think of engineers, I think of computer programmers, I think of very specialized surgeons, very specialized med techs, that type of thing. Sensors. This person is competitive, they're results driven, they're purposeful, and they're determined. Does type A come to mind? That's the type of thing where a lot of people are very athletic, they're very competitive in what they do, whether it be academics, sports, anything that like that matter. They're determined that they want to win. Feelers. These are touchy-feelers. I remember being in tech school, I had one professor who was close to my age, and the first thing she said is, don't say you love puppies and duckies and kitties, because the bottom line is they're not going to love you. And so you've got feelers, they're encouraging, they're sharing, they're patient, relaxed. This is huge. It's something that helps with the euthanasias, it helps with the serious surgeries, it helps with those pets that have long-term diagnosis, i.e. diabetes, that type of thing. You have to be able to understand how to communicate to these people. Intuitors. This is the type of person that will say, aha, I get that. And my aha moments come from medical plans. It's like, okay, I get that. That's the type of thing that I like to talk about with clients, is that it really helps me say, oh, I see where that's coming from. Intuitors are sociable, they're extroverted, they're enthusiastic, and they can be persuasive. A little bit more detail about this information. Again, the red sensors are competitive, they're results driven, they're purposeful, they're determined, they're blunt and to the point. Now, the pros and cons of that is you've got to be careful on how you work that. Do you want to be a bull in a chine shop, or do you want to catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar? And those are the type of things where you're dealing with your internal and external customers. You need to be able to have that balance as to how to break that out amongst your staff. They can be seen rude because they're very direct. Again, I remember times when we'd have certain people in the newspaper business, well, you can't talk to clients because you're too forthright. It doesn't mean they were rude. It's just that they didn't have the emotional IQ to say, I need to tone this down. I need to put in words that are not obstructive to their point of view. Yellow and intuitor, they're sociable, they're extroverted, they're enthusiastic, and they're persuasive. They follow their heart. They're people that are emotional and very caring. And again, this is a balance. You have to be careful of how you have an intuitor talk to a red, because the sensor, the red mode, is going to say get to the point, where the intuitor is going to want to talk about it. Anybody have that in their family or their coworkers? My wife is a litigator. She's a criminal defense attorney. I just raise up my hands and say I quit, because she's an intuitor and she's a thinker. And so it's the type of thing where she'll just knock me down and I say, okay, I give. But the point being is that you need to know how to react to those people, but you're going to have to get them on the team too. And feelers and intuitors get along great. Thinkers and sensors get along great. But what do you do when you have a sensor and a feeler? That can be a challenge. So what you have to do is find some common ground. And that common ground is the diagnosis, the objective, the goal. What is my purpose on dealing with this client, in terms of if we have a hard charging client and we want to bring them to the decision to some strong diagnostics. When I say strong diagnostics, I mean invasive and quite frankly can be expensive. It's a selling tool, and I don't mean selling in a way that you're trying to be a charlatan. It's something where you need to get to their emotional IQ to say this is the right thing for you. The sensor is going to give you the overview and the facts. The intuitor and the feeler can carve the message to how it works for them. I hope that makes sense. I would like to ask you guys a poll. What communication style are you? And I'm going to have my good friend Heidi start this poll. So folks, select what communication style that you believe you fall under. And we're doing percentages there, so this is kind of cool. I love these kind of things. We've got a thinker, we've got a sensor, and we're off to the races. Outstanding. Now this is cool. So we've got, ooh, this is a nice split. 30, 30, 10. That's cool. Yeah, it's hard to pick. Oh, one person said it's very hard to pick only one. That's true. And so, yes, there are times when you have different styles. And that's what happens is usually you're a predominant of one, but it'd be crazy to think you don't have the other skill sets too, because we all have to adapt to positions that we're in. Oh, outstanding. So the thinkers, 33% of you folks are thinkers, or 23, excuse me. Feelers, 23, actually a nice mix, and sensors. So my point is, I've got to hit all of your categories in order to get this stuff to stick with you. So again, that's something, this drives home the point that all of your customers are different too. What am I going to do to ensure that I'm able to communicate to my customer base? Because most likely your customer base is going to be the exact or very similar in terms of the nice spread. Now, if I'm going to, let's say I'm making a presentation, we just transferred to a new front end system. Depending on, I used to do that in the newspaper business too. And when I used to deal with the engineers, I would get right to the point. But when I'm dealing with the salespeople, because those are the people that are selling us the services, I was more of a feeler and an intuitor. So again, your customer service, you're going to have to deal with that in the manner in which your audience wants to receive the communication. Heidi, I've got a question for you. How do, if they ask a question, where does that pop up?
Right up here, Q&A.
Okay, so it just pops up if I see one. Okay,
Yep.
Very good. Thanks, folks. Appreciate your patience. All right, so next one.
Over here, under slides. Is now where I'm at. There we go.
Okay. Are we really listening? Are we paying attention to a client? And this is something that I like to talk about. Are we in the present? Anybody else get distracted while they're talking to somebody, thinking about what they have to do at the end of the day, talking about what they have to do next at the job, talking about something they forgot to do earlier, something they need to do tomorrow? That's part of the process of trying to understand, are we really listening? If they had ADD and ADHD tests in the 60s when I went to grade school, I would have been top of the charts. I totally believe that. The reality is, about 10 years ago, I had to understand that, hey, my attention span varies. So I need to start to listen more in terms of a more present manner. And the reason that's important is there's nothing more important than a pet that's being brought into your clinic, whether it be just basic dental cleaning or a surgery or a core shots or just a dew claw that needs to be removed or whatnot. We need to listen intently to what they're saying. And the reason I say that is because at that moment, it's big to them. We may see it all the time, but we have to take every issue as if it's the sole issue we have to deal with in that day. I'm not saying that's easy, but it's something that we have to really focus on. And this is a whole different presentation, but boy, I tell you, at the end of the day, meditation, understanding where you are at mentally, that really helps. Interruption. I have 3 children that are in their 30s. And I remember when they were young, they used to interrupt dad. And I came from a very staunch German family. And boy, you interrupted dad, life was tough. The point being is that in today's world, we get interrupted quite a bit because of the nature of our communication style. Chat rooms, forums, Facebook, you just do it. And I love my staff, and I have to share with them. I said, I'm going to teach you some old school stuff. And that is, let's talk about saying who I am when I call. These young ladies all sound the same to me. But the point being is that we need to understand that our clients are different too. They want to listen, they want to be listened to, and they want to be made to be number one. And how do we do that? We sit down and we say to them, I'm listening. And I know that sounds corny, but you have to do that. We're going to talk about that here.
questions, actually, if you click up here.
Right here?
Yep. And then hit chat
Thanks for your questions, folks.
here. That last one, yeah. Why don't you read it?
This one came from one of the attendees. I understand the need to let clients talk, but some clients will seriously go on for 20 minutes about a friend or another pet. We do need to keep our appointments moving and respect the next appointment that has shown up. Absolutely, no doubt. You have to say, you've got to go into the leading questions. And the bottom line is, how many times do they get stuck on the food that they're trying to, I can't remember this. Clients will call home and ask what type of food. You have to be gently in control, and that is, I understand, that's good to hear, but, or you can do what the Asian cultures do, yes, but, instead of saying, no, I understand, that's an interesting point, how about? You can lead them to another point of view, and that is you're directing the presentation or the communication. Without a doubt, you're right. I mean, it happens, so you still have to be in charge while letting them say what they need in the amount of time that you want to use for that communication to take place. I hope that makes sense. What if? So there are times when you have to talk about this. One says, what if by 10 seconds in, they're not giving us relevant info, and 18 seconds in, they're not even talking about their animal? Tell you, if I had a nickel for every time that happened, I could retire. The bottom line is, again, you still have to say, I have done this. What brought you in today? Tell me what brought you in today. And that's when people will say, okay, then Fluffy's got this, Fido's got that. There are times when you have to do that. I've had situations where I had one gentleman get upset with me. And then I had to say, sir, this is one of the few places where making you worse makes you first. And so what happens is then they start to get it, okay, we're still in an emergency hospital. I still need to understand that I have to get to the point right away. But again, it's the balancing act of leading them. And sometimes you are going to say is that we want to take the best care of you as possible. My role is to triage the clients, and that is to understand the severity of the symptoms that we have right now. I hope that helps. What's your best approach for clients that are constantly interrupting? What I do is I literally have to share. I put it in an interesting way. I say, the doctors want me to ask you this information right now because this allows us to better put you in a category of how urgent you need to be seen. Now, when I say urgent, you need to be seen, it's like how soon we can get you out of here. That's a big deal. So what happens is then you say, the reason I'm asking this is this way I can give you the best ballpark time on when you're going to be seen, because it's all about time. That's a big deal. I hope that helps. This is, I hit on this a little bit. This is literally what I say to folks. I say, I did it today. My name is Dave, and I'm a triage technician. I'm here to learn why you brought in Bella today. Now we're doing it a little bit differently because we're looking at him in the car, and I'll have to look through the window and say, oh, I had 3 cats come in, 2 carriers today, and they were all from the same litter, and they were like triplets. It's like, okay, who's who? And so, but the point being is that, why are you here? What brings us in today? Tell me more what you've seen that concerns you. That's a way to address your other concerns about getting off topic. What concerns you today? Hey, the bottom line is, I've had people say, well, I'm here today, but 6 weeks ago. I understand that, but I need to know what brought you in today. Then they stick with the program, because that's the #1 issue. Leading questions act as follow-up. When did the symptoms start? Has this happened before? Are there other pets in the house? That type of thing. You need to subtly control the conversation, the direction. Make sense? This sets the table for the entire visit. And I'm going to share something with you. Some of you may know the comic who passed away from Woodbury. Remember Mitch Hedberg? I knew Mitch when Mitch was a little boy. I grew up with Mitch's mom. And Mitch's mom taught me the director of first impressions. And we all are directors of first impressions. I don't care if it's the front desk. I don't care if it's the doctor. I don't care if it's the surgeon. It's everybody. And what I mean by that is the first impression will last forever And if we can show these folks that we are trying to work in their best interest, that we do care, that's going to help tremendously. All right, just talking about first impressions. What makes a difference in the first 60 seconds? People want to feel important. They want to be made to feel that they're your only concern at that point in time. On a day clinic, that's a little bit easier because you're usually in a separate room where you're not hearing the other people in the room or in the other rooms, that type of thing. In the e-clinic, it can be a little bit more challenging, but you're acknowledging their presence. You're here for a reason. Let's talk about it. This one is very simple, a clean environment, but let me tell you, people notice the little things. If you're sitting in a clinic, I was at a clinic one time when I brought my dogs in, and I don't think it had been dusted for 6 months. Those little things notice when the clients are waiting for you. Those make a difference because it sticks out. Eye contact is critical. If you're going to talk to me, look at me. Again, this is basic stuff, but we talked earlier about the basic tenets of customer service are still there. And a lot of it's psychological. When I'm looking at you, I want to make sure that you're looking back at me, because I do that too. I expect them to look at me too. We all want to be the only one. We have this hierarchy of needs. If you're familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need nutrition, we need emotional stability, we need educational stability. Those all make up of how we communicate with people. Distractions can kill credibility. There's nothing worse than the kids playing on the games in the exam room. It happens. So we have to deal with that to try to get them to the point. And that's going to play a role in how we communicate to the parents. Again, the questions have to be relevant. Are we listening to what they're saying? Are they telling us what we need to know about today's visit? Again, staying on track. I want to share with you something that I've done for years that I learned from the gentleman I mentioned earlier. Each Tuesday is my lead day here at the clinic, and it's where I'm not on the floor. But I sit on the floor as if I'm a customer. Now, not every clinic can do that. We're fortunate that we're good size, but you can do this in every size clinic in unique ways. At first, my staff thought I was spying on them. I said, no, I'm not spying on you. I want to see what the customer's experiencing. I've been doing that for about 8 months. And what happens is people understand now that I'm there to see from the customer's point of view. And it's incredible the different angles you see. You see how your staff is working. You see how your staff communicates to each other. You see how clients look at each other. Now's not a good time, but before we did the curbside, the stuff I learned was incredible. So I strongly encourage you to take a secret shopper approach. It's something that can really help you get a different perspective of what you're doing in your clinic, why you're doing some things, and why you're not doing some things. I think it's really important. Are there any questions on that? The do's and don'ts of first impressions, this is simple stuff, but I think what happens is in today's world, we have to be reminded of the basics. Scripts are terribly important, but they can't be canned. We have to understand that people don't talk like a script in normal conversation. If we do, then we're being talked down to where people think we're not taking them serious. It will kill your credibility. It doesn't mean you don't practice the things that you want to talk about. I do it all the time in the car. The bottom line is it helps tremendously to still have some ad hoc phrases in your communication. I find repeating words to clients is a big deal. And what I mean by that is, so you're telling me he's agitated. Well, that's different than the word upset. Agitated means irritated, what's going on? Well, why are we irritated? Is there a new pet in the house? Did you go on vacation? Do you have a pet sitter? Those type of things. So my point is, if they're using unique adjectives or descriptive words, use those words back because you understand that it helps them see that you're listening and that you're taking their words seriously. Because if you put in a separate word, for example, somebody says they're mad. If you put in disappointed. No, okay, I understand you're mad. Be honest with them. Because if you downplay that, they're gonna think you're taking them less seriously. It can come off as condescending. Focus on the present. I can't tell you how important mindfulness is in dealing with customer service, because what happens is, if we're focusing on the next people I have to do discharges with, next person I have to pull meds up. Now, I'm not saying that's easy, but if you focus on the present, you get a little bit less concerned about what we're not doing and when we have to do it. Let's see. Okay, thank you. I love these. How to best set client expectations? How long will we talk? That's a great way to do it. Absolutely. Because what I share to do, I tell my staff, if we can get out of there in 3 to 5 minutes, life is good. That's the goal. Now, today's a little bit tougher in today's world, but as you go, I'll tell the client, my goal is to, in the next 3 to 5 minutes, just get as much information as I can with you that's relevant to today's appointment. Usually you're setting the table. Mr. Black, does your staff act differently when you're around? At first they did, sir. What's the old man with the gray hair sitting in the corner for? You know what though? They love it now because they're finding out that I'm not there to review them. It's purely for the understanding of the client and how they interact, and you wouldn't believe how much buy-in you get, because here's the reality. I remember when I first became a manager in the newspaper business, my dad never said much, but when he did, I usually listened. He'd say, when you want to go to the base of a hill, don't tell your staff to go there first. You go up first. And that's something that has always stuck with me. And I don't care how small it is. You got to be able to do the dirty work and the big work. So I hope that answers your question. It really helps. I like it. It's fun. Believe it or not, I'm an extrovert away from the job. Last thing I want to do is see people. All right, let's go to the next one here. Handling apologies. You got to be honest. You got to be cool and say to the point, I'm sorry you experienced this. What can we do to help? Set the expectations. Now that's going to vary by clinic and vary by business. When we're investigating issues with clients, it's a long process, or it can be a long process just because of all the issues involved. It could be multiple days of hospitalization. It could be multiple communications that have to be reviewed. Or if you're at a day clinic, you can have smaller time frames in which to gather the information. So your communication timeline or your expectations for the client in terms of when they can expect a result or an answer is going to be shorter. So you have to set realistic timelines. Deliver measurable results. My goal is to get this information to you by this time. If that changes, I will let you know. I say this to people. I will take ownership of your issue. People need to know that. My biggest fear in life is calling Dish Network when I want to make a change to my programming, and the person can wreck my life. And I always have to be very candid with those people. I said, hey, will you help me out? I need your help, because people want to be helpful. But inside, they want to help. And I'll say, I need somebody to take ownership. If they'll say that, then you've got them. But I get real nervous if I'm treating somebody like I shouldn't. I'm thinking, oh my God, my world's going to be turned upside down. When fault has been determined, there's two things to do. Take ownership and move as quickly as possible. There's nothing worse than something sitting on a plate forever, because here's what happens. That festers, emotions get in the way, and what happens is people are saying they just don't care. It's okay to call and say, I'm sorry, we don't have a definitive answer right now. I want you to know that we are still working on it. The balancing act there is you can't do it too many times, because then you're going to lose credibility. You've got the boy that cried wolf. I hope that makes sense. Then what you do is you share with them, here's what we've come up with. This is why we came up with this, and this is what we'd like to do for you. Now, most of the time, people will be okay with that. You're always going to have some challenges, and every situation is different. But please understand that this is not a one-size-fits-all. Everything is different, but the end result is, if you can communicate with the client, our goal is to find a happy median where we can both be satisfied. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Now, some people are gonna not give you that, but you do the best you can. I'd be naive if I thought that was not the case. Perception versus reality. Wait time. In a clinic, it's perceived actual time studies show it's usually 25% higher than the actual wait time, the average actual. That's just reality. Now, how do we deal with that? Communication. Keep people up to speed of what's going on. Because what happens is we break up the time frame. It's smaller chunks. It's not easy, especially in today's world, and it's getting harder. But the perceived wait time, as long as you remember that it's always going to be higher than it actually is, that means you have to communicate more often. 77% of the people overestimate their wait time. Whether you're at the barber, whether you're at a restaurant, you name it. People in their mind, how many times, if you're giving a speech like today, or wherever it is, time goes much quicker in your mind than it usually does. And that's the type of thing where the mind and the actual self are different. And that's where I get back to the psychology, staying in the present. How many people, when they're stressed or have anxiety, it's because you don't know an answer to somebody, or to something, excuse me. Uncertainty equals anxiety. We're control freaks by nature. If something we want to know it now. So this is why you set expectations with facts. You say to the client, boy, I understand where you're coming from. I need to deal with this right now. When I'm triaging a patient, I have to get as specific as possible in order to help the doctor and the techs in back understand why I'm bringing this pet back. Provide data that the customer cannot see or is not aware of. This is huge, especially in a clinic, any clinic setting. What I mean by that is, how many times have people say, well, what's the wait for? Well, I'll share with people, I understand where you're coming from. You probably can't see this, but we have 32 pets in the back. And they go, what? They can't see them. They can't see what's going on in your back room or in your back treatment area. We have to remind people that while you may not see people up front, we have 27 pets that have brought in over the last 24 hours. I just had that today. We had a cesarean complication, and the pet came in, and I had to share with some people. You don't see that, but let me share with you what just happened. And so the point being is that giving them information behind the scenes is very helpful. Let's do another poll. And this one I want to talk about, and this is kind of a self-introspection. Am I able to focus on the present? I like this one. Okay. I was going to say, if anybody said all the time, they're lying. Very cool. Most of the time, some of the time, honestly, I struggle. I struggle with it. Depends on what day it is. Again, I'm a true believer in that this is something that, again, what your personal routine is in terms of yoga, meditation, reading, getting away from the job. The bottom line is we have to balance ourselves and getting away from the things that create anxiety. Let me tell you, running in the rain with a mask on, getting pets in and out of the car, that's stress and anxiety. While at the same time, you've got the owner saying, well, what's going on? And the point is, we all have to step away from that. And being able to be in the present, no matter whether I'm with my wife or I'm talking to my kids or I'm with some friends doing a Zoom chat like I did with some buddies of mine all over the country last night, we have to separate and get into the present. Not easy, but it's a concerted effort. Ideal selves. Our mode of communication is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. It's deep. And what happens is I am projecting how I feel about myself. I like this example right here that says, and a real life example of what's happened the last 48 hours, and you can raise your hand virtually here. How many people did the census? Oh yeah, why don't you raise your hand? I want to see how many people completed their census. And he's showing me this fancy stuff. Outstanding. Great. Put yourself in this category. People, and I'm going to make two statements. Historically, people that fill out the census are more educated, make more money, and are easier to get along with. Yeah, that's me. Or people that fill out the census are usually less likely to vote, less likely to participate in community events. The point is, you want to be part of the winning group. You want to be a part of the groovy gang. So you're going to be more likely to be a part of the ideal selves group. A good example of that in this area here is people that vote. Potential voters are told they're above average citizens, likely to vote and participate in political events. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty civic-minded individual. They're about average in their beliefs, their interests, and behaviors. Well, why would I vote? My point being, I want to be talked up. I want to be a part of that group that has very positive attributes. Which group was more than 15% likely to vote and why? A study was done by Source Leadership IQ. That's reality. We want to be a part of the bigger group. This is part of positive labeling. This is how others see ourselves, how coworkers see ourselves, how you classify yourself in your job, in your relationship, in your parenting, with your friends, with your customers. Another way to look at this is at your looking glass self. When I have an employee or a coworker or a friend, and this is not original thought, I had somebody do this with me, so I'm stealing. When somebody asks me, how do you deal with tough situations? There's one person I have to be happy with at the end of the day, and that's me. I'm my toughest critic, and that's called the looking glass self. What happens is, if I can look at myself in the mirror and say I did the best of my ability, at the end of the day, life is good. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, but it's something that I look at when I'm dealing with clients. How many times have you been in a situation when you've dealt with a client that says, hey, oh, I should have done that differently. Oh man, I think I was too short. Hey, I've called people and said, if I came off short, I apologize. And what happens is your looking glass self is taking a look at what could I have done better. In my addendum, I've got a link to a really neat poem called The Man in the Glass. It's something that I try to live by and I've shared with others that, again, at the end of the day, if you're trying to please everybody, it ain't gonna happen. What you need to do is follow some principles in customer service. Being candid, being truthful, being self to your individuality. Those are the type of things that allow you to have a relevant looking glass self and positive labeling that helps you to do your customer service job. Does that make sense? It's not easy because in today's world, life is getting a lot more complicated. Kindness. I've had 3 episodes of kindness that I've seen in the media world because I come from the media world. I'm focused on that. NPR now has an end of day phone line where you can call and leave random acts of kindness. Channel 5 has one, and there's a new site talking about random acts of kindness. The point being is, in today's world, that's a big deal. And that can happen in the clinic too. It doesn't mean that you're giving them $100 off their $200 bill. It means you're just saying, can I share something with you? I think that the way you deal with your children in a tough environment is a big deal. I've said that to many people where they're trying to keep their kids under control because that's a very challenging situation. Those little types of things show that you're paying attention. There's 3 facets of kindness: giving, not getting anything in return, food, money, or gifts. We can do that in the clinic. We've got a doctor here that says, kill them with food, keep them happy. and not food for the clients, but food for the pets. And it does work, because food is always something you can never have enough of with your pets. Helping, doing things for others to help them solve a problem or achieve a goal. There's nothing more satisfying. I should not overall, but I get great satisfaction with helping a client who doesn't have to see a doctor. What I mean by that is, that it's a soft tissue injury where it's a bruise and they can go home and not have to see the doctor. Or it's something that it's reverse sneezing. Guess what? That's the only time I want you to look at YouTube. This is the type of thing where you can see, they go, oh yeah, that is that. That's really cool, because we're saving them some money, we're saving them some time, and we're getting rid of the anxiety. The anxiety goes away of having to come to the clinic. Tending to another person's personal, physical, and or emotional needs. This is bottom line empathy, getting out of yourself. Some of the biggest challenges we have in an e-clinic is dealing with people with mental challenges and or special needs, because that can be a real challenge, mostly for them. Because what happens is, it may be a service pet, it may be a caring pet, it's something that we have to step out. Even with the day clinic, you have to do that and get out and understand that I'm just going to give. I'm not expecting anything in return. That can be a real challenge. And I know that's kind of a vague comment or a vague philosophy, but think of it as altruism. I'm giving you something, I don't want anything in return. I'm not trying to be a saint. You're just trying to say, hey, I'm listening and I want to help you. Motivations behind kindness. As a customer service frontline person, empathy, we just talked about, wanting to make others feel loved and or happy. Personal emotional benefit. Hey, it's nice to be nice. A desire to help. Wanting to change the world or society for the better. I'm going to change this world my corner, one corner at a time, and showing appreciation. Because if I understand that, was it Maya Angelou said, be the change you want to see in the world. I think that's it. Somebody can confirm that. The point is that it's got to start from within. We're going to do another poll. Heidi, we've got another poll.
Okay. This one?
Yeah. Okay. What factors can affect positive labeling and the looking glass self? There's a trick in here, and I'll share that with you in a moment. Outstanding. That's all right. So there's the trick. The looking glass self can affect the looking glass self. In other words, what's affecting how I'm seeing myself? So that, quite frankly, the answer is all of the above, which 10 of the 13 you got exactly. But how you see yourself can affect how you see yourself. Is that real? Is that artificial? Or is that in the now? Is that in the present? Client feedback, that's a big one. Of course, we have what a client says. It's going to help determine how we feel about ourselves. Physical and mental health. I don't even have to go into that today. In today's world, that's a big issue. Business conditions coincides with what we're experiencing today. That's the type of thing that help us better see how we see ourselves, and ask yourself, is this really me? Because at the end of the day, you know what your looking glass self is. And that is a person just trying to do good, trying to do the best I can, and trying to learn. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. And what I mean by that is this particular slide is from a clinic standpoint. It also means from asking the client, am I sharing this information? Is what I said make sense to you? Is there something that I missed? Ask them what is something that needs to be clarified. But in this case, don't be afraid to feedback highlights the clinic. Ask your clinic, are you listening carefully to me? In other words, ask your coworkers. Oh, this is a good one. Suggestions for encouraging thinking about kindness, especially in thinker-sensor types. I'm going to wait to answer that until we get to the generational differences, okay? Because you're going to see that that's really apropos. I hope that helps. Ask your clinic these questions. That's all right. There we go. Oh. The clinic staff listens carefully to me. Are we listening to the client? Your clinic explains things to me clearly. As a customer, am I getting things explained to me clearly? I'm jumping ahead just a second here, but I've got examples of a customer service survey on behalf of your staff that they can give themselves that I'll share with you in the addendum. Your clinic keeps me informed of policy changes and our treatments. These are things you want your customers to be asking themselves. Are these things being met for my needs? Your clinic follows through on promises. People do not remember you for what you do. They remember you for what you don't do. That's a reality in business. I don't care what aspect of business you work in. Your clinic responds constructively to feedback and or concerns. I may not like the answer, but if you treat me like an adult and deal with me as an important customer, that's a big deal. My choice to use your clinic was a wise one. Nobody wants to make a mistake. Yeah, I choose this clinic because I think they do a good job, and here's why they do a good job. I would recommend your clinic. I can't think of too many businesses that recommendations from other pet owners is more important than in individual veterinary clinics. It's a big, big deal. I have a clinic that I've been going to for 20 years where I live in Lakeville, and I just love them. And the point is, I've probably referred dozens of people over the years, and it's something that recommendations are still the #1 way to get people to try a new clinic. I've provided a link, and you'll have this too in the addendum, but a great resource to develop your own customer survey. And the nice thing you can do this, the way to do this is to ensure that you're tailoring it to your specific clinic. Make sure you're taking in what your focus is. Don't try to be something you're not. Understand that your clients have issues too in terms of what do they expect from us. So when you take a peek at that survey, understand that it can be tailored and painted to the manner in which you want it to be. Want to take a hard look at your own customer service? I've got a state of New York customer service test for you to give to your employees. Rate your own customer service. And what this does, it's a way for your own employees to say, this is where I need help. What am I doing well? What do I need to improve upon? What am I not doing so well? That's a good baseline for starting your customer service initiative. And somebody raised a hand here. Okay. So I see where somebody put in a question. Maggie, if you have a question, you just want to type it in because this is my first time using Zoom. Okay, here we go. I see that if you have mentioned that the phone is a better way to communicate, however, no one answers numbers they don't recognize and never checks voicemails. We end up spending more time playing phone tag and wasting time. Email has been a much better way of conveying information, not having to repeat with it the spouse, friend, and repeat it with the spouse, friend, and being a full part of the medical record. I agree with that. Maybe I should clarify with that, Christine, is that The phone is where you're going to make a big impact. You've got a real good opportunity to hook them. And I know that sounds old-fashioned, but how many times have email been miscommunicated? Now, if you're doing basics, customer service, let me make that a little bit more clear. Customer service or issues, you've got to talk face-to-face or telephone. Email is a great information tool, sharing back and forth. I get that. You're spot on about that. And in today's world, we can't control who's picking up their phone and who's not. But the more important the issue, the more relevant the issue, I think most people agree that phone is the best way to communicate serious issues. I hope that makes sense. Back to the customer service information regarding your own skill set. Take a look at that on your own time, and you can do a little quiz with your own staff as to how they see their own skills amongst themselves versus the rest of the company. Back here. Okay. Rounding out today, two things. We're going to follow up with generational differences, and this may address the question that we had regarding kindness, and then learning styles. Generational differences are real. Right now we have 4 types of generations in the workforce. And then we've got learning styles. With those generational differences, we have learning styles that come into play, how we learn things, how we see things, how we understand things, how we want things to be. Let's talk a little bit about that. I love this chart. You're going to see a lot of different charts out there. This one is the most common: traditionalists, baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. When I was in the newspaper business, I did a lot of training with HR directors because I specialized in recruitment advertising. And so I dealt with workforce generation issues. What happens here is traditionalists are different than baby boomers are different than millennials are different than Generation X. How do we communicate to those people? What are the hot buttons? Some of the neat factors here: traditionalists are value hard work. Baby boomers are individualistic and optimistic. Generation X is more pragmatic and skeptical. Millennials are enthusiastic and self-confident. These are basic overviews, but they also highlight what their key motivations are. Baby boomers, I'm a baby boomer. I expected advancement and positive interaction with not only my staff, but the managers I've had over the years. I was brought up in that manner. I have a couple kids that are millennials. They value innovation. They want to be recognized for achievement, but they also want to be socially conscious. They're much more socially conscious than my generation, for the most part. But the reason I think this information is important, you can focus on what the hot buttons are and how to communicate to these people. The next slide that I'm going to have, about 2 or 3 slides down, talks about generational differences in customer expectations. So how does a Generation X person expect to be treated versus a baby boomer? And we're going to do a poll quick. On what generation do you belong to? There we go. So it looks like we have a split: Generation X and millennial, and baby boomers round out. This is important from the standpoint of how to go about your communication and your expectations dealing with the clients. It's something that can't be overlooked because the differences are real, the differences are genuine, and they're measurable. It doesn't mean they're good or bad, they just are. 4 styles of learning. We all learn, we all take in information differently. There are visual learners, there are oral learners, there are read and write learners, and there are kinesthetic learners. Simply put, you're going to see different types of styles, but these pretty much encompass all the basics. Visual learning, learn best by reading and converting printed material into symbols. How do I get this information? What can it do for me? How can I best use it? Oral, I need to listen to something. I need to hear it so I can transcribe it in my head to put it into my way of doing what I know to do best. Reading and writing learners, these are book learners. Learn best by reading and writing information. And then there's kinesthetic learners, learn by doing. I'm a terrible word. I'm that one. So the bottom line is I need to do it for it to stick with me. Do we cross over? Sure we do. I went back to college 25 years after I graduated from college the first time back in 1984. There were no computers when I went to college back in the early 80s. I came back to school in 2009, where I had to learn how to study via a laptop, via chat rooms, via everything. That was a big deal. So what happened is I had to change the way that I apply information and knowledge. That's something that was really hard for me at first, but I love it now. So what happens is you can adapt. And with the oral part, I learned to listen to more books in audio. I like listening to books while I'm driving. I like listening to textbooks, that type of thing. So I've accompanied all three of the 4 into my personal life. Any questions on styles of learning? Okay. Let's talk briefly about some key elements today. This has been a lot of information, and I want you to understand that the addendum is going to be your resource guide for following up and tailoring things that meet your needs. This is more detail about the 4 communication styles that we talked about. Share this with your staff, share this with your clinic owner, share this with your spouse, your friends, your significant other. It helps tremendously in getting to see what makes you what you are. And one thing we talked about earlier was the sensor and the intuitor can clash, the thinker and the feeler can clash, but it doesn't mean they can't work together. That's the one thing I would like you to walk away from here today, is that nobody's asking an intuitor to become a thinker, but understand that the world's made up of lots of different people, lots of different ways to communicate. The ideal self, just look at the middle here. The ideal self is an idealized version of yourself created out of what you have learned from your life experiences, the demands of society, and what you admire in your role models. I'm going to highlight this right here, the demands of society. It's tough right now. People feel like they're losing themselves because we're shut down. Business has changed. Our lives have changed. Our family interactions have changed. So the ideal self is there's an onslaught of uncontrollable factors right now that we're dealing with. So what happens is we have to step back and say to myself, how am I going to stick to my roots? How can I still focus on what I have to do to be true to myself and able to deal with my job? Hope that makes sense. I'm not going to read this, but I want you to take some time to look at this when you have some time. The looking glass self and how it applies to how we treat people, how we deal with customer service, how we deal with problems, how we interact with challenges. The poem I talked about, The Man in the Glass, is on the bottom of this slide. It's a quick, I think there's only 4 or 5 stanzas. It's really a nice thing to live by. I really enjoy it because it's down and dirty and to the point. Take a peek at that when you have some time. The customer service skill assessment. This is what you can highlight for your own staff. This is not a good copy. I'm sorry, the PDF was kind of goofy, but just retype it and tweak the questions to your own needs. This is the first page. its rating into strong, moderate, improvement opportunity, or not applicable. For example, I have a strong commitment to provide our customers with excellent service. Well, what does that mean? Am I making them happy by price? Am I solving their needs by service? Or are we helping them with ongoing care for their pet? So you can expand on that a little bit. I have a good understanding of what our customers expect and require. A good answer to that, most people are going to say, you know what, I think I know, but if I ask, I might get a different answer. And then there's a part two. And again, you can tailor these to what your needs are. The generational differences. The question regarding kindness, this is what I was referring to earlier. This is the same chart here, but I want you to take a peek here. Generational differences in customer service expectations. This is huge. For baby boomers, focus on in-store experiences. Leverage technology. A common misconception about older generations is that they're inexperienced when it comes to technology. 67% own a smartphone and 57% use social media. My father's 83 and he's so smartphone literate, it's incredible. And the bottom line is, we don't want to paint a broad brush, but understand what makes certain generations tick. It's fair to say traditionalists and baby boomers still like the niceties, the little things in life, because things were a little bit less complicated, less outside influences. Rewards and discounts. Kindness to a baby boomer is give me a discount on something, give me a tchotchke, give me something relevant regarding my experience. I hope that makes sense. This also highlights everything for Generation X. Be honest and transparent. When you're for kindness, be honest and transparent. Reward them with customer loyalty. Leverage social media. That's a big deal. Millennials. Focus on e-commerce experiences, because that was the generation that really hit the online commerce, that really grew up with them. Personalized recommendations. How can I have one of my clients feel better about their experience? Maybe I have one of my senior people who's well respected make a personal call to a client to say, hey, how's Fluffy doing? How did we do for you? That's a big deal. They like that personal interaction. And the last one is Generation Z. Again, I want it now. Generation Z is pretty fast acting because honestly, the world is fast acting for them. They've seen a lot of things happen, big time on video games, big time on everything's chat rooms, TikTok, all that crazy stuff. There's going to be a new TikTok or whatever the heck they call it tomorrow. So there's going to be a new mousetrap that they're going to be involved with. So that's something that is very important for this generation in that, what have you done for me lately? But they also want to be heard. IBM found out that 44% want the opportunity to share their ideas and brands. That's a big deal. They want all the information, but they still want to be heard from a personal standpoint too. That's a lot of information from the standpoint of looking at your customer service and how you can focus on what's best for your customer. This is just a recap of the oral, read, write, kinesthetic, and visual learners. And then a more detail about the learning styles that you can bring into your customer service goals. I hope I didn't move too fast. It's a lot of data. If I had to sum it up in 2 sentences, customer service is a mission that changes daily. It's something that we have to focus on in order to understand that we are the directors of first impression that are going to make or break their visit, whether we like it or not. It's a big responsibility. It's one that I'm proud of, but it's something that not everybody aspires to. And if we could get people to bump that up, the company's better as a whole. Any questions? I think many people are scared, especially in Minnesota, to go out on a limb and be vulnerable to others in the way you're describing. Being authentic and kind, what do you say to those people? Baby steps. What happens is it's not easy to get out of your own shell. I was never this way. I was a little wallflower. But again, when I'm at home, I'm a wallflower. I had to be successful in my job in order to be successful in the career I chose in the publishing world and then transition to this. I had to step out and do baby steps. So it's baby steps. You have to press your anxiety level. That makes sense? So what you have to do is start with the little things. It's like when you're running a marathon, you don't train 20 miles first, you go half a mile, then you go 1, then you go so on. What is the first thing you onboard new employees with customer service? The director of first impressions, that we are who they're going to see. They don't remember what the doctor looks like. They don't remember what the tech looks like. They're going to remember us. That's just the way it is. It's a big responsibility, and I really feel that we need to share with people that that's something we need to be proud of and take very seriously. I hope that helps, Mr. Black. I want to thank you all for your time. I know that life is goofy in today's world. I wish you nothing but success, and please be safe.